Why are you guys laughing? Alright, so today we're going to talk about significant figures. Last week on Thursday, I think, how many digits did I say each answer should have? Thank you for raising your hand.
3.
3 digits. Now, when we talk about significant figures, we can substitute digits for figures or numbers for figures. Okay, so significant numbers, significant digits, or significant figures. All of those mean the same thing. And this goes back to measuring and how accurate your number is when you measure something. For example, when we did our rubber band car, more importantly, when you went outside and measured how far your rubber band car traveled, what decimal place or how accurate was your measurement with the meter stick you were using? Yes.
Up to about the 10th decimal place.
So the 10th, did anyone get closer than that? The second to the 100th decimal? What's the unit, 100th of a meter? What is that?
Centimeter.
A centimeter, right? Hopefully most of you guys are measuring to centimeters, but that was at the beginning of the year. With the meter stick you were using, you can be accurate up to the millimeter mark, right?
Yeah.
So that's the thousandths place. But not all of you measured to that accuracy. So if you only measure to the accuracy of the tenths place, then your number was only, depending on how far away, say it went like 4.3 meters. Right? How many digits is that? 4.3. 2 digits. So that would be an accuracy of 2 digits, right? Because that's as far as you measured. You didn't measure to the centimeter mark, so we don't know how many centimeters it actually went. Okay? Or millimeters. You didn't, more importantly, you didn't measure to millimeters part, so we don't know how many fractions of a centimeter it went. Which all goes down to when we're looking at numbers, especially when we're adding and subtracting, multiplying, dividing, when we're using these numbers and when we're measuring them, okay, how accurate is that number actually? Well, there's 2 types of numbers that we're dealing with. Okay? There's those that we've measured, and then those that are placeholders. For example, if you have a really small number, that's like 0.003. Those zeros in the front, are they showing any type of measurement? No, they're just showing the place that 3 is holding, right? 0.003. Those zeros in the front are just placeholders. So when we're talking about significant figures, significant figures are actual measured numbers, not placeholders. And when we're trying to determine how many significant figures something has, it depends on if the decimal is seen, okay? So, depends, when I say numbers with decimals or numbers without decimals, you have to take into consideration that every number has a decimal, right? So that's why I have visible. So numbers with visible decimals versus numbers with understood decimals. That's probably a better way of saying that. So if you have a number like 263, that does not have an apparent decimal, but it has an understood decimal at the end. So depending on if the number has a decimal visible or not will determine how you figure out how many significant figures it has. So I know this is kind of abstract what I'm talking about. And if you're a visual person, which I'm a visual person, once we get to the practice problems, this will make more sense once we start applying this. So the first thing we're going to talk about are numbers with visible decimals. Okay? Decimals that we can see. And there are two parts to the rule. Ready? First part. Zeros in front of the number do not count in your overall significant figure numbering. Zeros in front of the number do not count. Now, does this say zeros in front of the decimal do not count? No, it's in front of the number. And when I say number, I mean the first non-zero. We'll do some examples. With that being said, zeros don't count that are in the front. But every other digit in the number does count, including zeros at the end. So zeros at the end do count, zeros in the front do not count. What's the next slide going to be?
Practice.
Practice,
Yeah.
number one. So, number one, we have 100.0. So what's the first part of our rule? Well, first of all, does this have a decimal?
Yeah.
Yes. That's a visible decimal. So what's the first part of our rule? Yes.
Zeros in front of the number don't count.
Zeros in front of the number do not count. Are there any zeros in front of the number?
No.
No. There's no, bless you. There's no zeros in the front. Okay, what's the next part of the rule? Spencer? Okay, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4 digits. Right? So all of those count. Yes.
Like, why do you use the 100 instead of 100.0?
That was the number that was given. Because this means, the question was, why is the practice number 1 100.0 instead of just 100? This means that I measured, for example, if you look at this meter stick, okay, and on top of that, I'm measuring this piece of wood, which happens to be another meter stick, right? So, say the question asked, how many centimeters is this meter stick? Well, I'm going to take my plastic meter stick and measure my wooden meter stick. And I find that it is exactly 100 0.0 centimeters.
So like we talked about earlier, like it's exact.
It is exactly 0.0. That's right. Because if I just put 100, then that could mean that could be an estimate. Yeah, someone could have estimated. But since I put 0.0 on there, that means I've actually measured it out to that 10th place. Good question. So in this case, this number 100.0 has 4 significant figures. 4 sig figs. Okay? And like I said, even if this is a little abstract at the beginning, the more of these you do, the better you'll understand. Okay, look at number 2. We have 0.002. How many zeros do we have in the front?
3.
These 3, right? Do they count?
No.
No, they don't count. So how many significant figures are there?
1.
1. We're going to pros at this. Number 3, 2.04. How many zeros do we have in front?
None.
0.
0, zeros, none. So how many significant figures?
3.
3. Why does this 0 count?
Because
In the number.
Because it's in the number, and it's behind the decimal. Both of those count. Number 4, we have 0.023420. Raise your hand if you think it's 6 sig figs. Raise your hand if you think it's 7 sig figs. Raise your hand if you think it's 4 sig figs. Raise your hand if you think it's 3 sig figs. Raise your hand if you wish you're at the state fair right now. No? Love your class. Nice try. How many think there are 4 sig figs? Does this 0 in the back count?
Yes.
Yes. Right? So this has how many?
5.
5.
Big hands.
5 sig figs. Okay, questions on that? Good? Alright, so what's next?
Numbers without decimals.
Just like your psychic. Numbers without decimals. Now this is obviously without visible decimals. So I'm going to switch it up on you. Before, zeros in the front didn't count.
So without visible decimals? I mean, they can't.
Like 100.
Yeah.
Right? When you're talking. There's no visible, even though there's an understood decimal at the back. So if there was a decimal, zeros in the front didn't count. But if there are without decimals, zeros in the
Back. All digits count.
right. And just like on the what was that, number 3 on the previous slide? Was that sandwich 0? Sandwich zeros always count.
Wait, what?
Sandwich zeros? 0 sandwiches? Even if they have mayo on them?
Ew.
I know. Lard and egg white. Mayo
Someone
is.
told me there's cow strawberries.
Yes, they harvest the cow slobber as they're milking them.
Why not? They harvest cow beans.
Okay, so we have zeros at the end that do not count, and that's it. Which brings me to another question. If there's no decimal, are you going to have zeros in the front?
No.
No. You're going to have zeros in the front. Anyway. Alright, what's next?
Practice.
Practice.
Number 2. Matt, are you something?
Yeah.
For that thing.
Alright, go ahead and bless you, write these down, and write down what you think the answer should be. And then we'll go through and see if you're right. All right, number 1. Are there any zeros to worry about?
No.
No. So all of them are
All
significant.
the invisible.
Number 2, how many? 1?
One.
Raise your hand if you think there's 3. Raise your hand if you think there are.
But they used to sandwich zeros, so that confused me.
It has to be sandwiched by another non-zero.
So that's not
So it's actually
zero. Yeah!
Neither of those count, right? So it's 1. Number 3.
One.
Raise your hand if you think it's, or I know. Do fingers. How many? You're number 10 back there. Most of us are number 1. Number 4, how many fingers? Zero in the back doesn't count? Right. You get 4.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Sandwich 0, right? 0 sandwich. Questions on any of those? Nope. Oh, what a beautiful Venn diagram that you're now going to copy down.
Oh, we're done.
Copy down your Venn diagram.
So we're supposed to copy it down?
Yes. Copy down one.
Make sure you put your title of what this is showing, so it makes sense. What doesn't count?
This is like the MasterCard thing.
You know, my grades, second semester. So this is a quick visual reference when you're working out these problems, or when you're studying for the quiz.
Oh, when's the quiz?
Which is when?
Shooting for Thursday,
Write that down.
maybe Wednesday, might be tomorrow. I don't know,
Don't do that.
but it's sometime this week. Friday.
Who wants to end the day with a check?
That's a good point.
Yeah, let them on Thursday.
Well, I mean, get more time to study.
Then it's definitely gonna be Friday.
Now there'd be more time to pass them.
Moving on.
Yeah.
Everyone has their own beautiful Venn diagram.
Not that. Mine is the best.
What are these for? Of course, everyone's writing down the questions so you can go back and review. Oh, yes, Elizabeth.
Do you want us to like solve it and then count it, or for 34? Or do you
Great
want us
question. Great question. Use your best judgment.
to solve it?
I think that I would probably, if I were to come up with these, then I would think that I would have said to take it out of scientific notation and then figure out, which I don't have up there, so.
I'm confused. What? Oh, if you get
But I don't say to take it out of scientific notation, so. Use your best judgment.
Mind
This
blown.
is a trick question.
I'm not even sure. No, this is okay. Yep.
What is problem? Please write down the problem as well. When you go back and study, you'll have some kind of form of reference instead of 4 numbers. Number 1. Show me fingers. Got 1, I got 5s, 5s and 1s, 5s and 1s. So is there a decimal?
Yeah.
Yes. So zeros in the front don't count, right? Everything else does count. 5s. Number 2, how many fingers? Big fat 0 sandwich, right? 0 sandwich.
You make me hungry.
Number 3.
It's confusing.
Number 3. Show me fingers. See a lot of 1s. I see some 6s.
Oh, yeah, it's supposed to be out of something.
1s and 6s.
And take
What if I were to tell you that whenever you're trying to calculate the number of significant figures of scientific notation, you're just looking at that? Would you reevaluate your answer?
no.
Yes.
I do it.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
So hold up the number again of 1.00.
Staying my
Oh, wait.
See 3s now. See 5s that are morphing to 3s because they're going with the crowd and not necessarily what they actually think. 6s. So if you have 1.00, right? It's just 1.00 alone. How many significant figures is this?
Trace.
3. So our answer is 3. If I were to have said, take it out of scientific notation first, and then tell me how many significant figures, then yes, it would just be 1. Okay, but I didn't want that. I want how many this number has. What about number 4?
3.
Right. Questions on that? Good. So, our summary. Who wants to give me a summary plot?
Are you supposed to be writing down something?
Yes.
What?
So, someone give me a bullet point of one of the scientific or significant figures. Yes.
With decimals, zeros, and ones of the number don't count.
Okay. We're going to modify that a little bit more. Are zeros in the front ever going to count?
No.
Yes.
Yes.
Are zeros in the front ever going to? Are you ever going to have zeros in the front of a number
No.
that are going to count?
No.
No. Okay. So we're just going to simplify that and say zeros in front don't count. What's another bullet point? Anything.
He's also known as 3 sig fig.
Yes. We will in here be doing 3 sig figs. I believe that is. That's something that you're going to be hearing over and over and over again. 3 sig figs. 3 sig figs. What does that mean? Why is that important, Danny?
Because it means 3 digits in the number.
In your answer, from now on, you need to have 3 digits in your answer. That's right. What's another bullet point? What about zeros in the back?
They count.
When? When do they count? When don't they count?
Numbers without decimals, they don't count. Yeah.
So, your number does not have a decimal. Zeros at the back don't count. What about our food item?
Sandwich and the
Sandwich items. There are zeros.
Sandwich zeros count.
one sandwich.
It's kind of revolved around
Zero sandwich?
zero.
You filled with nothing. You just 2 pieces of bread.
No, real sandwich. That's not like ham, cheese, lettuce, pickles.
Oh,
Racist. Why would I put jalapeno?
I put jalapenos on mine.
Excellent. Any questions?